the window up.
I don't want to. Roll the window up.
It's Pete. It's Pete. Why do you think it's called piss wash? How did it get the name?
It's in my mouth.
Imagine you are given $250 million to make a movie about space aliens, and you ruin the entire thing simply because you were too scared to print one single word on a poster. When you think of sci-fi movies, you think of Avatar, you think of Star Wars, you think of billionaires printing infinite cash, but behind the flashing lasers and the computer graphics is a terrifying financial graveyard. Sci-fi is the absolute fastest way for an arrogant Hollywood studio to completely bankrupt itself. Today, we're looking at 6 massive, wildly expensive sci-fi movies that completely destroyed the people who made them. We aren't talking about bad acting. We are exposing the insane, almost unbelievable mistakes made by the billionaires in charge, who literally burned hundreds of millions of dollars right in front of our eyes. If you want to know the absolute dumbest decisions in Hollywood history and actually learn how the movie business works, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Let's open the vault. Mistake number 1. Disney's John Carter. In 2012, Disney wanted to create the next Star Wars, so they handed over $250 million to make a massive, epic movie based on a famous book called John Carter of Mars. But they made the single dumbest marketing mistake in the history of business. A few months before release, a Disney executive started panicking. Another movie with the word Mars in the title had just flopped at the box office. So the Disney boss got terrified, and he ordered his marketing team to delete the words of Mars from all the advertising. Think about how insane that is. They took an epic movie about aliens, spaceships, and intergalactic war, and they named it John Carter. It sounds like a movie about your local accountant. When regular people looked at the poster, they had absolutely no idea it was a sci-fi movie, so nobody bought tickets. Disney spent $250 million making a masterpiece and then hid what the movie was actually about. It resulted in a historic $200 million loss. The executive who made that choice, he was forced to resign just weeks later. But John Carter was at least a gamble. What happens when a studio makes a certified masterpiece and still loses millions?
You killed him with one blow.
Mistake number 2, Blade Runner 2049. Ask any hardcore movie fan and they will tell you this is one of the greatest movies ever made. It won Oscars, the reviews were perfect, but financially, it was a massacre. Here is a brutal lesson in movie math. If you spend $150 million to make a movie, you need teenagers and families to buy tickets. That is the only way to break even. But Warner Brothers made this movie rated R, and it was nearly 3 hours long, and it was a slow, depressing detective story. You cannot spend $150 million on a 3-hour rated R movie and expect it to make Marvel money. The math is literally impossible. Families couldn't bring their kids. Teenagers couldn't buy tickets. The studio effectively banned 50% of the population from seeing their incredibly expensive movie. They lost $80 million, not because the movie was bad, but because the accountants forgot who their customers actually were. Speaking of forgetting your customers, our next disaster is what happens when you treat your most loyal fans like absolute garbage.
We were being hunted.
Mistake number 3, Terminator Dark Fate. Paramount Pictures thought they had a guaranteed money printer. They brought back Arnold Schwarzenegger, but they completely ignored a deadly Hollywood disease called brand rot. If your favorite restaurant serves you terrible, raw food 3 times in a row, you stop going to that restaurant, right? The exact same thing happens with movie franchises. The studios had already made 3 completely terrible Terminator movies in a row. They burned their own fan base. So when they spent $185 million to make a 4th reboot, they just arrogantly expected the fans to blindly line up and hand over their cash. But the audience finally woke up. They refused to be scammed again. The movie was a total ghost town. Paramount lost $120 million because they forgot that trust takes years to build, but only one bad movie to destroy. But what happens when you don't even have a franchise? What happens when one single man decides to gamble his entire life savings on a space movie?
My name is Sarah Connor. I hunt Terminators.
Mistake number 4, Valerian and the City of 1,000 Planets. Most people have never even heard of this movie. It was directed by a man named Luc Besson. He didn't use Disney or Warner Brothers. He independently raised $180 million himself. It is the most expensive independent European movie ever created. He put everything on the line. He bought the most beautiful visual effects in the world. The movie looks absolutely stunning. But he made one fatal mistake. He spent $180 million on the computers and completely forgot to hire good actors or write a good script. The main characters had zero chemistry. The story was painfully boring. It proves the ultimate rule of Filmonomics. $100 million in special effects cannot hide a lazy script. The movie crashed and burned, losing $135 million, and almost bankrupted the director's entire company. And speaking of directors making terrible choices, wait until you hear how the Mistake number 5, Jupiter Ascending. In 1999, the Wachowskis directed The Matrix. It changed cinema forever and made Warner Brothers billions. Because of this, the studio treated them like gods. Years later, the Wachowskis walked into Warner Brothers with a script about a space-cleaning lady who falls in love with a half-dog, half-human space alien on roller skates. Instead of throwing the script in the trash, the executives handed them a blank check for $176 million. They gave them zero supervision, no roles, no testing. It was a complete catastrophe. The movie was laughed out of theaters. It proves that in Hollywood, past success is incredibly dangerous. When corporate executives are too scared to say no to a famous director, millions of dollars are flushed down the drain. But all of these failures were just bad movies or bad marketing. Our final sci-fi disaster was an inside job. It is the story of how a major studio purposely destroyed their own movie just to boost a streaming app. In 2021, Warner Brothers spent nearly $200 million to bring back Keanu Reeves for a 4th Matrix movie, theaters, and on their streaming app, HBO Max, on the exact same day. Why on... When you look at this sci-fi graveyard, the truth hits you right in the face. Making a movie isn't about magic. It is about cold, hard business. You can have the biggest special effects, the most famous actors, and the coolest spaceships in the galaxy. But if you give your movie a terrible title, if you ignore who your audience is, or if you get greedy with your streaming platform, the box office will show you absolutely no mercy. The billionaires in Hollywood don't know what they are doing. They are just throwing hundreds of millions of dollars against the wall and praying that it sticks. If this video blew your mind, wait until you see what happens when we look at the fantasy genre. If you want to know how the biggest magical movies of all time turned into financial nightmares, click the video on your screen right now. And don't forget to subscribe to follow the money.